I'm sure everyone here has heard of the term 24/7. It popped into our vocabulary just a few years ago. And when I think about it, I don't remember hearing my parents use that term when I was growing up in the 50s. I don't remember hearing it in my school years in the 60s. I don't remember hearing it in my college days in the 70s or even in graduate school. Just the last 10 or 15 years, it has become the theme song of our culture. 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week. In other words, nonstop. It never quits. On and on. But that's only part of the story. We not only live in a world of 24/7, we also live in a world of more. Richard Swinson describes this in his book, and I love the title, Hurtling Toward Oblivion. If you saw that on a shelf, would you pick it off and read it? It's kind of ominous. Here's what he says about more. No matter where we look, it makes no difference. There is always more. No matter what the topic we consider, there is always more. Obviously, there are more people, lots of people. There are more cars traveling more miles over more roads, and more airplanes carrying more passengers on more flights. There are more computers, more books, more magazines, all processing and distributing more information. There are more businesses offering more services and making more products. There are more buildings, more restaurants, more medications, more telephones, and more money. And there are more activities, more choices, more change, more stress, more technology, and complexity. Wherever we look, we're surrounded by more. How do you feel with that? I want you to take your bulletin and turn to the middle, because I want you to see this is what I call being lost in my space. I'm lost in all of this activity. Have you ever felt like you could hardly keep up with yourself, much less manage a relationship? Charles Swindoll puts it this way. In place of a quiet, responsive spirit, we offer an inner washing machine, churning with anxiety, clogged with too much activity, and spilling over with resentment and impatience. And what does it look like? Well, for example, if I'm a husband following this pace, or if I'm a father following this pace, then I'm going to be missing in action. What I mean by that is I'm not going to show up for the relationship. I'm not going to be there when the relationship calls for me because I'm just too busy. And I don't know about you, but when I think about this, it just makes me tired of being tired. I'm just tired of being tired. The 23rd Psalm has long been an expression of quiet and rest. And that's why I found it so interesting that when Marcia Hornock rewrote the 23rd Psalm to reflect our tired, stressed out culture. I want you to see it. The clock is my dictator. I shall not rest. It makes me lie down only when exhausted. It leads me to deep depression. It hounds my soul. It leads me in circles of frenzy for activity's sake. Even though I run frantically from task to task, I will never get it all done, for my ideal is with me. Deadlines and my need for approval, they drive me. They demand performance from me beyond the limits of my schedule. They anoint my head with migraines. My in-basket overflows. Surely fatigue and time pressure shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the bonds of frustration forever. I'm tired of being tired. But I think another reason that I find myself sometimes lost in my space is because I don't know how to say no. I don't know how to say it. You see, there are three big lies that our culture tells us to believe. They tell us that you can have it all, you can do it all, and you deserve it all. And you can tell the extent to which I believe these lies by how many commitments I have made and how overloaded I have become. Because believing I can have it all, well, that leads to another problem. Where am I going to put it all? Have you looked in your garage, in your closets, in your attic? If you believe you can have it all, where are you going to put it all? If I believe that I can do it all, well, that just sends me everywhere trying to do everything. And if I believe that I deserve it all, well, then that just creates the 24/7 because I've got to get it all if I deserve it all. And it all adds up to just one thing: exhaustion. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of being tired. I don't know how to say no. But then there's a third reason that I'm lost in my space, and that's my life has no punctuation. In their book, Overcoming Overload, Steve and Mary Farrer began chapter 2 with a very interesting paragraph. Here it is. Try to read that. Here's what it says. I know what you're thinking. Someone made a terrible mistake in this paragraph. It must have been the printer or perhaps the proofreader. But whoever it was, someone wasn't doing his job. How in the world did this paragraph make it into this book? What happens to a paragraph when there's no punctuation? Well, it looks like this. What happens to a life or a marriage or a family if there is no punctuation? If there are no spaces, no stops, no rests, no periods, no turning the page, just one long sentence. I know what happens. We're all exhausted. We're always running, we're always working, we're always producing. We have ruts in our life, but we don't have any rhythm. We have recreation, but we don't have any reverence. You know what the word recreation comes from? Think about it. To recreate. Well, I know some recreation that doesn't do any of that. At the end of it, I'm more exhausted than when I started. There's been no recreation. There's been no thought. There's been no mulling things over. I don't know anymore. I haven't made any decisions. I'm just tired at the end of it. And the reason I wanted us to think through all of this is because this person who is lost in my space becomes the person who stumbles into our space, who stumbles into a relationship. Now, what happens if there are two people and they're both exhausted and they both follow this kind of pace and they join in a marriage or in a family or in a relationship? For several decades, Tim Kimmel has studied hurried families. And he put his findings into a book, and I really love the title, Little House on the Freeway. And I want to share with you some of his findings. He found 7 characteristics of hurried families. And be honest if any of these strike a note with you. He found first that hurried families can't relax. Now, they know a lot of people, but usually they don't have very many close friends because you can't have close friends unless you relax with them, unless you let them know you, unless you spend time with them. If I could use the blunt language of Charles Swindoll, busyness rapes relationships. It substitutes shallow frenzy for deep friendship. It fills the calendar but fractures the family. Hurried families can't relax. He also found, secondly, that hurried families can't enjoy quiet. Now, you might say that their lives are filled with entertainment, or you could just say their lives are filled with noise. They don't know what to do with quiet. They feel intimidated with silence. They have to have something on all the time. They can call it background noise, but it's got to be there. They don't want to be alone, I think, with their thoughts. And so oddly, as their hearts are crying out for rest, they're covering up the pain with noise. One year, my family and I went camping at our favorite place. And we went there every year when our kids were little. No television, no phone, no traffic. And the only sound was the bubbling brook. We were just about a few feet away, and the wind in the trees. And we would spend a week there. And our kids always had a little trouble for about a day wanting to know when they could turn the cartoons on. You know, maybe we can plug it into this tree. But after about a day, they begin to explore. They begin to see things that were not interesting to them in the city, but are terribly interesting to them now. And that was the purpose of our time. Even chopping wood would send kind of a hollow echo through this valley. And we went there to enjoy the pace and the quiet. Well, one evening after we had all settled in for the night, we were all lying in our tent on our air mattresses, sleeping, listening to the wind and listening to the brook. Another camping family pulled in beside us. And they had a really nice trailer. I was a little envious of their trailer. And we listened to them through our tent, setting up their camp. It's kind of fun. And we kept waiting for the sound to die down so that the wind and the brook could take us back into sleep. And then I heard it. A gasoline generator. Sounds like a lawnmower. You see, they wanted to watch a little television that night. And they did for several hours into the night. And the whole time they were there, they were just a weekend camper. But I don't think they came out the whole time. I wondered why they came. Reception would have been better at home. Quarters would have been roomier at home. But they were there. And have you ever tried to sleep next to a running lawnmower? This family did not understand quiet. Thirdly, hurried families, he found, seldom feel satisfied. They seldom feel satisfied. And even though they're sometimes always shopping and upgrading, their problem is not really materialism. No, it's more serious and more subtle. What does it say? They are not satisfied. They're not satisfied with what they have. They're not satisfied with where they are. They're not satisfied with who they are. Contentment is always in the future. It's just around the corner. It's tomorrow. I'm not happy, never will be happy with today. They're not satisfied. And they're in a hurry, moving toward what may be the next thing. He found, fourthly, that hurried families lack absolutes. Now think about this. They have little sense of permanence, no security, no absolutes. They feel like they can't really put their weight down on anything. And so their lives are tired, they're restless, they're hurried, they're moving from thing to thing to thing, looking for that one thing which they will never find that they can put their lives down on. And even faith is difficult for them because faith requires trust in an absolute God. And that's just a little bit too permanent for them. Fifthly, he found that hurried families will serve for the wrong reasons. Now, they can be very active extremely helpful. They can be the host of every party. In fact, they seem to have time for just about everybody except their own marriage and their own family. And what I mean is, you don't have to be known to be active and to be busy. In fact, sometimes the more you fill your lives with activity, the less people will know you. You're too busy to be known. You're too flitting around here and there, doing everything. But your family, that's another story. You live with them. They know you. And if it's too painful, if it's too difficult to face it, then you can just fill your life with activity and avoid it altogether. Sixthly, he found that hurried families are intimidated by worry. Now, we're not talking here about the legitimate concerns that come into your mind when things just don't go right. No, we're talking about the hundreds of little worries about everything. I'm worried about the house, the job, the car, the carpet, the children, the drugstore, the road, the supermarket. It doesn't matter. Whatever my eyes fall on, I'm worried about it. Worry is kind of like the hairline fractures in the foundation of this home. And they can't rest. And you know why they can't rest? Something might happen. It just might happen. And so I better be worried about it and prepared for it. And then finally, number 7, he found that hurried families will often live for the rewards of success. Competitive, overachieving, they have a love affair with winning. And they don't know how to rest because they don't know how to lose. And they're filled with pride because they win, but they're not filled with joy because they're tired and exhausted. Now, of course, not every family, hurried family, has all 7 of these. Wow, what would that family look like if it had all of them? But I hope that you were honest if you saw yourself here. And the assumption behind all of these is that the reason that we can't relax or be quiet or feel satisfaction, the reason that we're uncomfortable with absolutes, the reason a family might worry or always have to win, the reason is that they're in a hurry. They're moving at breakneck speed. Have you ever noticed that when you're in a hurry, everything moves by at a blur? You can't really see it. It's like trying to look at the road right beside the car as you're driving. It just moves by too fast to be able to see it. And you have to stop to see it. See, that's the question I have. Who is it that can teach us how to stop? And when I am lost in my space and stumbling in our space, what I need to be doing is looking for God's space. He's the one who can teach me to stop. Now, I want you to consider these 3 points. Did you know that slowing down is not a suggestion? It's not Jesus' suggestion. It's a commandment. Look at it. Go into your room, Matthew 6. Close the door and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Now, obeying Jesus here doesn't mean that I completely shut out all the noise and all the doubts and all the bad dreams and all the fears. No, in fact, when I go in that closet and when I am alone, away from all that external noise, I can now hear the internal noise more clearly. It was Frederick Faber who wrote, "Whenever the sounds of the world die out in the soul or sink low, then we hear these whisperings of God. He is always whispering to us, only we do not always hear because of the noise, hurry, and distraction which life causes as it rushes on. I don't hear it because I'm not quiet." In Mark chapter 6, verse 31, here's the situation. So many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat. He said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Let's go find a place of quiet. Do I have a plan to do that? Do you have a plan to do that? Franciscus Finion wrote, "It is a gentle, delicate voice only heard by those who will no longer hear anything else." I've got to be quiet if I'm going to hear it. I've got to find that place. No, it's not a suggestion. It's a commandment. Slow down. Secondly, do you know how to discover the difference between my rest and our rest? You see, being silent can be very painful, but this is why it's so important. First, I have to listen to my own heart, made very clear to me by silence. In other words, I bring my chaotic heart to God. That's my rest. And then I'm ready to be with someone else. I'm ready to hear someone else, to help someone else, and to rest together. That's the difference. And then thirdly, can we follow the rhythm of Jesus? If you want a paradigm, here it is. Here's the rhythm of Jesus. First, He receives. Mark 1, verse 9. At that time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. As Jesus was coming up out of the water, He saw heaven being torn open and the Spirit descend on Him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, whom I love. With you I'm well pleased." At once the Spirit sent Him out into the desert. And He was in the desert 40 days being tempted by Satan. He was with the wild animals, and angels attended Him. He's receiving. He's alone. He's with God. And He's reading the Bible. You know how I know? When Satan tempts Him, you know what He does? He quotes from Deuteronomy every single time to Satan. I think that's what He was in out there. He receives. Secondly, He shares. Go down a little further in the story, verse 32. That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but He would not let the demons speak because they knew who He was. So He's sharing what He has. And then thirdly, He replenishes. The very next verse. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where He prayed. This is the rhythm of Jesus. He receives from the Father His strength for the day. Time with God, time alone, time in prayer. And then He's ready to share out of the strength that God gave Him. And then at the end of an exhausting day, the next morning, He goes back and He replenishes. And you see, like Jesus, we have the choice of what we do with our day, of how we begin it and how we end it. It all depends on whether we are ready. And I say that because some time ago I saw a little film. It's a conversation with God, and it's entitled, "Are You Ready?" And I want you to see the film.
How are you? I just had to send a note to tell you how much I care about you. I don't want you to feel guilty. That's not my style. I think you know that. But I've been waiting. I followed you everywhere today. I saw you talking with your friends. I hoped that you'd want to talk with me, too. I waited. I have so many gifts for you. That fiery rise of the sun over the low hills this morning, my idea. That cool resting breeze, mine too. Remember, I created the sun, the moon, the seas, the stars, and you. I just wanted to reach out and give you a lift and say, I give you this day. I've overcome it. Life is good. I waited, but you didn't notice me. At lunch, the way your food danced on your tongue and satisfied your hunger, I made it that way. I can satisfy your spirit. But you get so busy, so distracted, so disconnected. You worry so much. That's not the life I designed for you. The spirit I custom fit for you when you became mine and we wrote your name in the book and sang from the sheer joy of it. That's how I wish you'd react to my name. To my face. I'm ready. Are you ready? Are you ready to see the life that I built for you? You're my exquisite creation. We've got a lot to do. You've got some wonderful things to see. Lives to dance through. Souls to enrich. Worlds to change. Are you ready? I am. Listen to the voice of my spirit. The beckoning. The longing. The life I want for you is so very different from the world you see now. Let's get started. Child, I love you with a love you'll never understand. Notice me. Speak to me. Please don't forget about me. I love you, but I won't bother you anymore. It's your decision. I've chosen you, and I will wait.
And you have to choose between the sunset or the traffic. They're both there every day. And I can decide. You'll have to choose whether to remember the Creator or to let the sound of the city cover Him up. You decide that every day. Let me give you 4 places that we can begin. The first one, don't just do something, sit there. Don't just do something. Sit there. And I know we're used to hearing it the other way around. But do you have a place to sit? Psalm 32 verse 20. We wait and hope for the Lord. He is our help and shield. Psalm 37 verse 7. Be still for the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Psalm 40 and verse 1. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. Psalm 130, verse 5. I wait for the Lord. My soul waits, and in His word I put my hope. Do you have a place to wait? Or do you just get up and go? And all these texts about waiting and sitting and listening, they prepare us to go. But I got to have a place to wait. Don't just do something. Sit there. Secondly, slow down together. Slow down together. I mean, if people can quit smoking together, if they can lose weight together, if they can start exercising together, then maybe they can help each other slow down together. God created relationships and thereby created accountability. And so use the power of accountability and slow down together. Thirdly, prioritize the second commandment. Prioritize the second commandment. What do I mean by that? Well, you know what the second commandment is. The first one is love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. The second is love your neighbor as yourself. Well, let's prioritize that, meaning make it more specific. Who is your closest neighbor? My closest neighbor is the one that sleeps next to me. Actually, she sleeps on this side. My closest neighbor. My next closest neighbor is around the corner and down the hall. Prioritize it. Jesus says there's a great commandment, and He puts right next to it, the very next thing is love your neighbor. And your neighbor is your family. Prioritize it. And then fourthly, build a margin around your family. Not a wall, but a margin. Room to move. Here's a picture of it. There's your family. Here's the margin around your family. You need to put this border around it. I have a friend who is a truck driver. He had another career for most of his life, and when he was about my age, he said, I've always wanted to drive trucks. And so he's driving trucks now. He has a blog. I think it's called the Trucker's Tale or something. And he said one day that the greatest adjustment he had was that there is not as much margin in the lane. Think about it. Go from a Honda to an 18-wheeler. Not as much room on either side of that truck. And so the truck is more difficult to drive because there's not much margin. And the family is more difficult to live because there's no margin. Don't be like the father who said to his toddler, now, Tommy, I've scheduled 15 minutes for us tonight, and let's optimize our time and make really good use of it. Okay, Tommy? Let's go. Now. No, you don't say that to a toddler. You build margin around your family. You say no to other people and say yes to your family. Lots of time.